we see internationally, we see some signs that the government of China is pushing hard on Hong Kong, pushing hard on South China Sea, pushing hard on certain issues around the world. Are they pushing hard domestically, crossing certain lines in terms of extending their grip on people in ways that they hadn't before? It seems to me that this system they have of having QR codes in people's cell phones where red, yellow, green, this is creating a measure of control domestically that they've never had. It seems to me that the government might be using this as a way of expanding its control of its population. Do you think that's happening?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think it was happening already. This is their long-term goal, is to have a much stronger monitoring system in place for all their citizens. And this is, quite, if you could possibly use the word, fortuitous in the same sentence as COVID-19. This is very fortuitous for the Chinese because, this monitoring is exactly what needs to be done in a crisis like this. So I do think they are using it, and I am worried about how, I do think they're using this as an opportunity to try to beef up all that capability that they already had, and they keep trying to strengthen. And I do worry that we'll see it used in ways a lot less pleasant going forward.
Wow. So let's shift to international dimension. What impact do you think the coronavirus is going to have on China's relations with the world? That's a spectacularly simple question. The answer is endless. But do you detect any signs that the rest of the world is saying to China, you guys did this, and the state of Missouri here sued China? How ridiculous is that? But what is your sense about, will the rest of the world look at this as a reason to be less engaged in China, to be less ready to accept Chinese, quote, leadership in the world? What is your view on that?
Well, if you go back a few weeks, it did appear as if China's effort to use this as to sort of extend its soft power was going very successfully. We've seen this beginnings of real pushback now, certainly in the US, but also, for example, the Australian government recently said, reiterated what the US had been saying, which is we need the Chinese to be transparent. So the Chinese government needs to be transparent so we can get to the bottom of actually how this happened and where it came from. And so I do think that we're seeing these feelings expressed. It's hard to call ultimately what will happen, but I would say that unfortunately, our tremendous lack of success in dealing with COVID-19 is basically handing victory to the Chinese officials. So if they want to make that argument that they have a model that is superior in some ways, certainly dealing with a pandemic, then compared to the U.S., it's a pretty easy argument to make right now.
So tell us all about soft power projection. Chinese, according to my research, have been spending billions of dollars on extending the reach of their media around the world, have been building up their consulates and embassies around the world. They are engaged in a full-scale global battle to establish their narrative, as opposed to any other narratives out there. Would you agree with that, or am I overstating the case?
No, I think you're right. I think that that is happening right now, and we're also seeing different aspects of it. One aspect is much more pugnacious attitude by Chinese diplomats, people like Zhao Lijian, who's now a spokesman at the foreign ministry in China, being directly very critical of the U.S. and also, spreading conspiracy theories about how the virus originated, whether it comes from, whether the U.S. military had a role in it, and so on. So these are all things that we did not see before. There was the piece in the New York Times, I think yesterday, that looked at how whether or not they created some of the false pieces of reporting. They did their best to amplify. They're doing their best to amplify them now. And this is all something that was not true before at all. I mean, certainly wasn't true when I was living in China to this degree, and that wasn't very long ago. So I do think we're seeing this happen. We're seeing what you describe happen. Yes.